Welcome to the BiOptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now, here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What is Awesome Health? It's actually an acronym that stands for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mental beliefs and attitudes, and education. These are the pillars of peak health, and my team and I have created a free 12-week course that you can use to transform. Each day, you'll get a written and video lesson delivered to your inbox. Everything is covered from the foundations of digestion to advanced alternative therapies few people know about. And again, it's 100% free. Just go to bioptimizers.com. That's bioptimizers.com. So welcome to the Awesome Health Podcast brought to you by Optimizers. I'm your host, Wade T. Lightheart, and I'm here with actually my old roommate, Mr. Tone Floreal. How's it going today, buddy?
Tony Floreal, bro.
Great to have you on here. And for those of you who don't know the back history of who Tone is to me, first off, he's really an amazing guy. He's probably one of those people that have kind of lived the world of Zen, and lives it on an amazing level. He's got an incredible array of stories. He's worked on some of the who's who of a variety of areas. I mean, high performance athletes. He's worked on, public speakers, book authors. He's traveled all around the world. He's been interviewed on shows like London Real, and he's working with Olympic athletes, making people who thought their careers were over run faster, jump higher, feel better. And he does it in a way that I don't know what you would call what it is. It's you call it the flow. I mean, you've got all these flow terms, the Flobo, the Floreal, and a lot of people might not really understand what that is. So in your own words, Tone, who are you and what are you doing in the world, brother?
I'm just a regular guy, man. I, had a lot of setbacks growing up. Single mom household, father abandoned us, grew up hearing impaired, overweight, inactive, and low self-esteem, a lot of anxiety. So the thing that saved me was sports. It was a place that gave me a chance to express myself, being an introvert, very shy and self-conscious. And during those times, I've entered the flow state, which basically things for me happen in slow motion. I'm aware of things sensory is heightened. And, the first time it happened was just riding a wave in Ocean Beach, San Francisco. And I got into the tube. I was riding the barrel, and it just blew me away because everything went into slow motion. Being hearing impaired, had this sort of auditory loudness that was happening simultaneously as the water was like moving in slow motion. At the end, I could see the sunlight, and I popped out. And since then, I'd always wondered what that phenomenon is, and I call it the flow-nomenon, right? Because these experiences are hard to put in words. Things are timeless, and that's flow for me in a nutshell. There's all these technical terms, science, neuroscience, getting into it and studying it. But it's a pretty cool state, and one that I live my life by.
And the reality is you were talking about flow before I knew anybody talking about flow. And, we had the opportunity, we met at a health conference, and when we became friends, and then we ended up living together for a year or two. We used to run these high on health parties and stuff. And, I learned a lot from you about beingness and just outside of judgment or evaluation or just presence. And anybody that's been around you knows that you have an incredible presence. You're an incredible healer as well. And talk about, and I don't even know if you can articulate it. It's hard to articulate, but anybody that's been around you feels it. how are you able to get into this place? And I know you do it because I used to watch it when we did the high on health parties, and people would come in and you'd be working on them with your machine and all, but there was more going on. What is that you do?
Yeah, I mean, it was always a question I had after experiencing these states, and it was the place I felt free from any sort of monkey mind stuff, you know. So I was very critical of myself, had no confidence, and these times were the times where I was liberated. I felt like fully me, and you know, it was a place that I had discovered also through alcohol. When you know you're in high school and you're partying with your friends, and all of a sudden you have liquid courage, right? So it's probably like the closest resemblance of the flow in a natural state, but essentially your inner critic shuts off and you feel free, you feel limitless, you have a lot of confidence, you're funny, people like to be around you, you have that charisma. So it was always a search for me to figure out how to get there naturally, right? And it would have been so easy for me to become an alcoholic or dive into drugs per se, but you know, losing a kidney in an accident at the age of 15 kind of maybe had me reevaluate what was important in life and to protect that only kidney that I had. So that's why, you know, being around friends that got into, you know, various substances to bring on various states of mind, I ended up always being that person that, you know, was like the designated driver, or, you know, I mean, on a few occasions I would let myself loose, but
Sure.
but yeah, you know, I gotta live. But yeah, that, and also being hearing impaired too, right? I needed to figure out a way to listen to people because it was really difficult. So I tend to be more on that observant type, to watch body language and a sense of energy around somebody to compensate. So I mean, most people would sort of relate that to someone that's blind, that their sense of hearing is improved. So you know, hearing impaired, so it's like my eyesight is improved, but I'm able to almost feel different types of feedback, and that's what got me into, you know, the machine, which we'll probably talk about later. But just doing these practices, looking for ways to be free without you know, drugs per se. I just had this journey, and I was trying to learn on like how I could be my best self, and with sports and with certain experiences, even growing up in a Catholic school for about 9 years, although I was never baptized, I felt this energy, although I didn't understand the Latin language and didn't really like the formality of it, but in church I would be in awe of all the stained glass windows and the art, the crucifixion, like the gold, the marble, and then just this sense, this feeling I would get of myself and presence. So all of that combined over the years with technology, with finding myself in flow states in different situations, as you were saying earlier about the story of my life, I have many stories, and these things enable me to be present with people and to really feel everything with all the feedback that we're getting.
That's great. Now let's segue. I know you had a powerful experience that was kind of transformative. It was, you know, when you were in Guam. You want to talk about, you know, that happens because there's a lot of people out there that might go through a challenge and they might not see the opportunity in it. And that led you on a pretty amazing path. You want to talk about that for a minute, and then we'll kind of go into your professional side of work.
Yeah, so in Guam, I had what I called the holy shift, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was another profound flow state moment. But in this case, it may have been what they call a flow stage. So it was like an upgrade from the person that I was before. And essentially, I went to Guam for love, and things fell apart. And at that time, a lot of my happiness was based on, as everybody else's, materiality. So, materiality, and that's our reality. So, I had based my happiness on, a girlfriend. So when it didn't work out, I was devastated. And I didn't have much money when I went out to Guam. I spent like all of my college graduation party money, on my ticket to Guam. And it was a slow season. So being a strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, massage therapist at the time, I was working at a gym there. There wasn't much clients because all the sort of affluent clients were off island during the summer traveling the world. So I had, I think, about $40-$60 in my pocket. That was it. But the girlfriend broke up with me. I was nearly homeless. Fortunately, through her, I ended up renting a room in a house full of pilots. And long story short, the house was empty. A lot of the pilots weren't working at that time. So I was pretty lonely, and I was in pain and suffering mentally. And I just remember in tears, like the dark night of the soul, they say. And I called out to this thing called God, right? It was always something that I questioned going through Catholic school, having these spiritual flow experiences, even through meditation. So just rewind a little bit. I started getting into one of Steve Jobs' favorite books was Autobiography of a Yogi. And
one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, right. That's how we connected. So this book was saying all these sort of incredible things that would happen to people that started to realize themselves, the self-realization through a scientific way of meditation. And, the yogis knew something that, modern science is now starting to verify and validate. So I was always questioning this word God, right? I was questioning, like, what is it? Is it what they taught us in, sort of Christian-based school? Or was it like how I felt in flow states or when I was out in nature? And, just be in awe of beauty. I would see it in museums of art, hear it in music. And so it was always a search for, like, what that was. So I had a lot of Western background in religion, and I had a lot of Eastern background. And so I called out that dark night of the soul. I said, if there's a God, like, help me right now. And I just remember waking up the next morning. I even remember, like, crying myself to sleep. But I woke up the next morning, and it was like the veil was removed from my eyes, the curtain, and I saw the world as a flow stage. Now, I know these terminologies, but I didn't know about it then. And essentially, I would say it's what, a lot of religious people talk about, maybe Christians saying that they had they're born again. And, the terminology doesn't really mean anything to me because I think each spiritual tradition has their own language for this. But I had what I called a holy shift. And again, I didn't realize what that was until I met my next girlfriend, Miss Guam. And, we fell in love quickly, but, it fell apart just as fast as it started, man. And so I was just like, what the heck is wrong with me, man? Like, why can't I just, like, be happy? It's like, and I had another dark night of the soul because of that. It was like,
it wasn't dark enough the first time.
And it was like the thing that kind of sent me over to the other side where I had faith in like how life works. I started to see the evidence of it. And, even with Autobiography of a Yogi, I was like questioning all these stories, whether they were true or not. And being like a part scientist, I had to experiment. I had to find out for myself. And sure enough, my life has been similar to Forrest Gump, I would say. That dude's my idol. And I feel like that's how my life has been unfolding as well.
You touched on a lot of things there. Autobiography of Yogi, one of the most profound spiritual books ever written, influenced literally millions of people. You also talked about this flow state and the terminology around it and this kind of transformation that you have. But also, I think around this time, this is when you got involved shortly afterwards with microcurrent technology. So there's a lot of misunderstandings in this whole world. So you want to talk about what microcurrent is and what microcurrent isn't?
That's a great question. So microcurrent is based off of how our own physiology and our human bodies work, not just humans, but animals. My mentor would always say, a two-legged cell and a four-legged cell is still the same. A cell is a cell, whether, the organism has two legs or four legs. So our system runs on electricity. We have a brain, we have a nervous system, nerves, and essentially even the cell membrane has a dielectric, a polar lipid layer between negative and positive ions. So microcurrent is basically modeling after optimal human physiology or cell physiology, and it's a level that's very tiny. So what microcurrent isn't, for example, it's not like muscle stimulation where the current is in milliamperage range.
It's so like tens or something, right?
Tens, right? Or just some of these products that gives you like better abs, right? It's like over the counter, e-stim. And the current is quite high. So that's like if you're like in locomotion, you're moving your body, you're putting out milliamp type of contraction, electrical conductivity. But now if you start lifting more weight and you start recruiting more muscle fibers, that's because the amperage in from the brain to the muscle is increasing. So microcurrent is essentially below the muscle contraction threshold. So we're working on a level of electricity that's tiny. It's in the millionth or a billionth of an amperage. It's known as micro or even nano amps. And so what microcurrent has been effective in, it's helping people regenerate ATP, that's the energy packet of the cell that runs metabolism, every cell in these organelles called mitochondria. So essentially, microcurrent is like refueling your gas tank in your car or recharging your battery on your cell phone, right? And so the other muscle stim, as we were talking about earlier, is depleting your gas tank. It's removing the gas tank for the vehicle to operate. So that's pretty much the easy way to describe the difference between microcurrent and current that's way higher in the milliamperage range.
So this technology, how did you come about discovering it? How did you becoming one of the world's top practitioners in it, flying around the world with people into crisis modes and stuff, getting the call and kind of flowing on to the next crisis and going in there and doing your magic? How did that all come about? And you want to share that with our listeners?
Yes. So back to Guam, during that time, when I had that holy shift, it was weird because these things like what the movie The Secret's based on, and even Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill, these things started to come true for me. And so within the period of time where I had this transformation, the phone would just start ringing after like a long period of meditation. So some of the things that were happening in Autobiography were coming true. Like I only had $40 to $60 in my name. I didn't have a car. So I would be walking on the side of the road and people would pull over and like, ask me if I wanted a ride. So it was just magical. Like business improved at the gym. All of a sudden, like the affluent clients were coming back. People were finding out about the work that I did before I got into Microcurrent, and started working with the elite athletes of the island. I did a boot camp for kids that ended up on TV, newspaper, and radio. I became like known on the island. So I realized like, wow, in a short period of time, I could become known for something specific, and all the things I would visualize or even write on a piece of paper, my dreams, they would all start unfolding. So during that time, I was sort of burnt out on being a personal trainer. There was some upsides to it, but one of the downsides was I was only as effective when I felt my clients were with me. I didn't have as good as an influence with them when they were outside of my influence. So also, I just felt like I was becoming sort of like a bartender or a barber or hairdresser. It was like I was hearing like people's sort of dark secrets, like people were sort of almost confessing to me. And but long story short, I just got burnt out. I was looking for something that would have an impact on somebody immediately, like that would shift into that flow state, that place where they feel like themselves, their optimal self. So all of a sudden, I remember I made the decision I was going to leave Guam, knowing that I was pretty successful on a tiny island in the middle of the ocean, in the South Pacific. What would happen if I went back to the US? And so, and then the other intention I had was I want to do something that would have an impact on somebody. So not long after that, I got this random email, and I was involved in some financial group, education, kind of what you teach, Wade, with the wealthy backpacker. And it struck me because once a week they always interview a person of success, and it usually has to do with somebody that's a millionaire, done well financially. But this email headline said, former stuntman shatters his leg like Humpty Dumpty and uses space-age technology to regenerate the leg, right? And
it's a great piece of copy.
And I was like, what is this? This sounds like a joke, right? So I was curious. I looked into it, and that's how I found out about my mentor, John Thorpe, the former stuntman. He shattered his leg, used microcurrent technology to regenerate a leg that a doctor said would never be normal again. He would need a total knee replacement. And a year and a half from the date of his injury, he ran his first triathlon. And a couple of races later, he beat the orthopedic surgeon in a race that told him that he was the stupidest human being alive. To run on that leg, he would be crippled for life, And that's when the orthopedic surgeon saw the evidence. It was like, what are you doing? I need to find out about this.
John's a trip, and hopefully one day we'll get him on the show. He's a great guy. So let's talk about that. So you obviously, if I recall the story, you called him up, you flew to learn about this, and what would go there? What happened?
Yeah. So after I listened to the conference call, what struck me was he said that they'd have to rewrite the cellular physiology books and call it cellular physiology. And we all know it's kind of a mystery, but we don't know how our finger heals itself from a cut, right? We don't know how our body somehow adapts to our environment, whatever stressors we put on it. And some people have a hard time adapting, right? So Yeah. So anyways, I called up the Institute because I had a lot of questions. I was a bit skeptical, but I still had this knowingness, like this could be the answer to my prayer, my next phase in life. And I got talking to what I thought was a technician. We spoke. We're about the 40-minute mark, and he says, "Tony, where are you calling from?" And I'm like, "From Guam." He's like, "What the hell are you doing out in Guam, man? Are you a surfer or something?" And I was like, "Nah, I surf, but the reef's too shallow." And he says, "By the way, you're speaking to John Thorpe." And I said, "No idea, right?" And I said, "John, is it really true? Does this technology, really do what it does? And I want to come out and see you. I'm coming out from Guam, moving back to the mainland." And he's like, "Great, here's my personal cell phone number. Call me when you get to California and we'll meet up." And so, part of the magic of life was soon after I ended up in Maui to visit my mom and sister. And, I'd asked an old friend of mine who was a massage therapist on Maui, and I said, "Hey, have you ever heard of a guy named John Thorpe?" And she's like, "Yeah, I used to work for him." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "With the machine?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's the machine. Yeah." And I was like, "Does it work?" And she's like, "Yep, totally works." And there was a bunch of synchronicities that lined up like that while I was on the island. And so I ended up calling John Thorpe and saying, "Hey, I'm coming out to California. When can I see you?" And he says, "Tony, where are you calling from?" And I said, "Well, where are you at?" And he says, "I'm in Napili." And I'm like, "Shut up, man. I'm in Lahaina." And he's like, "Great, we'll meet for brunch tomorrow." And so he happened to be on Maui the same time I was. And I saw the leg in person. I met his fiance, Lisa, is now his wife at the time. And before it even got the chance to experience the machine, I knew that I had to do this. It was a leap of faith, trying to figure out how to come up with the investment. And I never got treated, but there was something in my heart that I was like, this is it. This is what I got to do.
And then you ended up getting a machine, and then you ended up healing a whole bunch of of course we have to say that we're not here to treat, diagnose, or heal any situations.
Yeah, exactly.
And all that government legal stuff. Yeah, right. But I've been on this machine. I've had like debilitating pain, injuries gone away. I've watched people with swollen, bruised, like rolled over 3rd-degree sprains and stuff like that. And then they're walking. I've seen guys with, bone on bone cartilage. And then a few months later, they're dancing on my living room at the stuff. And, this is incredible technology that there's a lot of people that could benefit from. You see all these athletes ending their careers or going under the knife when there is absolutely no need to do this, but it's like this technology is in secret or something. Like it's why is that? Why don't everybody know about microcurrent technology?
Yeah, it's the technology that we use is FDA registered, so it's under the federal regulations. It's not any kind of black market machine, even though it looks like one.
It does.
Yeah,
it shows up with a dark suitcase at your door. "I'm here to fix the problem."
Yeah, we gotta shock you. But why is it more familiar? I think just because science takes forever for things to be verified. It's starting to enter the sort of social space now because of things like biohacking. People like Dave Asprey, right, that are showing that there's other technologies out there. Silicon Valley, the X Prize for the Star Trek
tricorder,
tricorder,
yeah, it's come out.
I think they announced the winner of that. So, it's just timing. I think that the technology was so ahead of its time 40 years ago, and it at the time wasn't registered by the FDA because they said that something that tiny, such as microcurrent, would have no effect on the body. And that's why TENS units and e-stim at the time were the thing to use. But there's some upsides and downsides for each thing, but essentially it took science that long to finally validate and verify what exactly is going on in the body, including these new findings like easy water. It's just nuts that literally having photons from the sun on your skin with this sort of water, mineral water in your system, it's going to create a battery in your body. So we're literally recharging the same way that microcurrent recharges through electrons. Easy water is doing it through photons, right? But the end result is the body is storing more energy per surface area in the tissues, by doing these type of modalities.
And that's what speeds up the recovery of some of these debilitating conditions or injuries, because some of the recoveries are pretty remarkable.
Yeah. So what's incredible about what we have is that the research was there, but the accuracy is what enables what we do to far exceed what's typical out there. And because of the missile guidance chip, I don't know if this is true or not, but in my 12 years of working with this device, I would say that there is something about some sort of artificial intelligence that's in the machine that is interfacing with a human being using missile chip guidance technology. So the way that a missile seeks its target and hits it, the machine is able to look inside the body and hone in on those areas or pathways where there's blockages or resistance or too much energy, such as inflammation. And it'll hone in on it accurately, do a feedback loop across the cell membrane. And there's these little gates or like gatekeepers of the cell membrane that open and close with the precise amount of electrical stimulation over that membrane. And so that polarization is sort of the locking key to getting nutrients inside the cell and waste product out. And so you're able to do that from the moment the machine is interfacing with the human body. And for sure, you can tell when the channels open up. There is no guessing versus these other devices out on the market. Everybody gets the same treatment. It's like one key that fits everybody, but it's not true. You're just kind of running through the same frequencies and intensities, and you're hoping that it will unlock that cell membrane.
It's kind of like a mishmash of maybe currents. If you have enough monkeys banging on typewriters, eventually you get Shakespeare, but nobody knows how many monkeys you need and how long they need to be banging on that.
And now for a BiOptimizers fixed digestion tip, rapid cheat meal relief. Research shows that cheat meals can actually be an effective way to boost your metabolism. One key weight loss hormone, leptin, can be increased by up to 30% following a cheat meal. The challenge with the cheat meals is that all those extra calories and lower food quality can be hard to digest, which means you could be totally sidelined with a food coma after big cheat meals. The solution is to take strong digestive enzymes like masszymes, which will help rapidly digest and break down the extra food. 3 to 5 capsules before or right after your cheat meal can make a huge difference in how you feel following the cheat meal. If it's a cheat day with multiple large meals, you might want to go up to 10 capsules or higher to help you power through all that food. To save 10% on masszymes, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and enter the code CHEAT10 at checkout.
One of the things you talked about is individuality. And I think this is a common theme I'm seeing amongst the high performance coaches and practitioners and healers that we have on the podcast. You've developed some processes along with the technology to kind of accelerate that. I know John was kind of like the instigator of that, saying, hey, here's the machine. But it's like, if I go out and take a Ferrari out on the track, I'll probably crash it. Even though it's an amazing technology, if I don't know how to use that Ferrari, I'm just going to hit the wall and blow $1 million. So what
And die.
yeah, because I know you spent a lot of time teaching a lot of other people, not only how it works on an individual basis and how they can also become practitioners about that. You've done both of those sides of it. You want to talk a little bit about that process that you guys developed in using this technology to help people overcome debilitating conditions?
Yeah, John was, through his experience of the early days of discovering the technology through the famous Curleman and Joe clinic in LA. I mean, to this day, they still work with all the top athletes. And that clinic had the early version of the microcurrent device, the electroacuoscope and myopulse devices. And so John, finally got relief of his pain, but he still didn't have the range of motion to be able to like move his leg. And at that point, he already spent a lot of his, savings to get treated. He was trying to figure out how he could purchase this machine or these machines at the time. Now we have both machines in one case. But he essentially tried to find out this secret device. Like it didn't have like a sort of a manufacturer address or something. Like there was just this thing on the old device saying like Burbank, California. And I don't know how he found out like where their mailing address was, but he essentially got a hold of one of the agents for the inventor of the device, because the inventor of the device is, even to this day is top secret, right? And so John found this agent who was kind of surprised, like, how did you find us, right? And John's like, it doesn't matter, man. I just want the machine. Just give me the machine. And he didn't have the money. So what he did was he started working on racehorses in between working on himself in order to generate income to pay these machines off. So while he was working on racehorses, he discovered a certain protocol based on ancient Chinese acupuncture systems. And so in combination with that, with the training that he got originally with the machine, he started to develop his own protocols and found what was working and what wasn't working, and created a systematic way to get results, to get people out of pain, to improve range of motion, blood flow, and healing within the body. And so he basically created a training, and he trained me. And so he took me under his wing, and he taught me everything that he knew. And at the same time, I had my own exploration questions. And even with your help, Wade, encouraging me during the time that we lived together at the apartment, we started exploring different ways to access these states using microcurrent technology. And it was outside the framework of what I was taught. And I started making connections from there. And that's where the Floreal process has sort of evolved from. And what that means is that flow is sort of really esoteric for most people. It's like, well, like, what are you talking about? I can't make that connection. So everybody understands real. We know the material world. We live in a body, right? We're born, we die, that kind of thing. So what I figured out was how to bridge the gap between this world that's sort of mysterious, right? Like religions call it spirit. We don't know what this is. Science is trying to, I guess, materialize it as well. But I take this world and then the real world, and using the technology as the bridge, I'm able to induce electrically this flow state in people so that they could finally have that like holy shift moment. Like, oh, okay, I get it. This is how I felt when I was a kid. before I knew even my name. You look at babies when they're just in all this world, and before they know their name, their race, how much money they have, what they're wearing, how they compare to other people. Before all of that, when you get to that place where it's just pure silence is so loud and everything's clear and everything is bright, and you're just going like, holy shit. Like what kind of drug
That's
is
right.
this? And it's like, wait a minute, we actually produce all of this in our bodies naturally.
Yeah, it's kind of like accessing the inner pharmacy. And for those who don't know the backstory of how he got there, so Tone shows up and he's hanging out at my house, and I'm watching him heal all these people. And there's different levels of you can set the tones and you can set the various frequencies and that sort of stuff. And they were kind of working in a very narrow range. And I looked at it, and being the crazy experimenter that I am, I said, dude, but what happens if we turn it up to full blast? And you're like, well, I don't know, man. And I'm like, what are we waiting for, man? Let's just fire this thing up. And
yeah, well, it was essentially, it's like, well, the manual says this, but,
yeah.
but John also said that this machine can't hurt anybody, that it's below the threshold of, electrocution, like by far, right? Like it's below, it's so safe. There's never been any sort of liability from it when you use it properly. And so being Wade just said, well, what are you waiting for, man? Turn that up. And I remember, because I had done it myself, and I just remember like it was like, whoa, this is intense. And so I was like, okay, let's do it for you, Wade. And we like cranked it 2 notches to the full intensity, which is still microcurrent level, so low, right? And I just remember you just lit up like the sunlight, man. Your teeth came out and you're like, whoa. And man, I swore like lightning bolts were just coming off of you,
It was a powerful experience. I can share that. And for people who have ever questioned brain state technology or mystical states or these kind of altered perceptual conditions without drugs, without chemicals, that aren't based on hallucinations, you have actually you regularly take people to have these experiences, to turn that on, and then start developing the practices and the procedures. It's kind of like, okay, here's a taste of your potential. Now you've got this. Now people would say, okay, well, no, it's worthwhile. I want to get that again. I want to experience that again. And of course, that's what led into the High on Health parties, where
yeah.
I was setting up the products for all the BiOptimizers stuff that we advocate today. We were putting stuff all out there. It was no booze, no drugs. People would come in. I'd preset the chemistry. They'd get in line. They'd come over to see you, and they'd have one of these like 5-10 minute little blasts on the machine. And still to this day, that was years ago, I have people stop me in the streets like, you're the dudes at the High on Health party. And I'm like, yeah, that's us, man. And God, we got to have another one of those again one day. You want to talk about a little bit about where you feel technology is going in its bridge. You mentioned this. We have the kind of empirical Newtonian paradigm of causality of science, and then you have the mystical realm, which is outlined in books like Autobiography of a Yogi, and then and an athlete, which is interesting, and an athlete, and I think this is where it ties in, and you're seeing this more in flow state and people talking about flow state, as an athlete kind of gets into that place where they become the mystic. And we watch it. You can watch this on highlight reels every week. It's when sport goes beyond sport and becomes art. And anything at its highest level becomes art. And it's almost as if we can all recognize when something almost mystical happens, and we see it in the athletic world. It's honored in art. It's honored in engineering. And it permeates through all history. Where do you see this happening, and what role do you see technology playing in helping people bridge the gap between the mystical and hard science?
Yeah, the spirit is making a comeback. It's what the original Olympics was based on, what all these ancient cultures knew. And technology is amazing because it's becoming exponential. So things are becoming faster in terms of the processing power. And so some of the things that were invisible to our naked eye are now becoming real to people that, can you imagine what the sort of primitive tribes would have thought when they saw their brainwave activity or their heart wave activity or muscle wave activity? So the EEG, the EKG, the EMGs, these electrical devices that are measuring electrical signals in the body based on the type of tissue it is. So you hook up some primitive man or woman onto these machines and you can like show them what their brain waves look like and their heart wave and their muscles. And that would just become sort of a awakening moment, right? So technology these days, I mean, it's incredible what's unfolding from prosthetics to 3D printing, through 3D printing like organs and tissue and stem cells. And, it's all these things are becoming a reality. So the technology that I've been using is based on sort of those brain waves, heart wave, and muscle wave activity. And so the inventor had studied human beings that were in peak optimal performance. Why people like Michael Jordan had used the device. A lot of people don't know that, right? But Michael Jordan had, in a video, says that he had been sleeping with the device. Well, when you start to have these mystical experiences, when everything in your body, electrical body, goes into coherence, there is no more noise. It's just pure signal, like an antenna, the way the yogis talk about with the lightning rod of the spine. You're tuning in to frequencies, right? And when this device is linked up to you, and all of a sudden you and the device go into singularity, the human and the machine go into unitary like coherence. And when you have that experience, and then you start to connect the dots with these experiences in different situations of life, and you realize like, oh, anxiety, that's an interesting language, depression, when these things that you feel no longer has its grip on you and you're liberated. That's the whole intention of ancient technology. It's called meditation. It's like now we're able to use electrical current to entrain the body into these optimal states of being that had been studied in human beings like savant children that can play piano, Mozart and Bach, and athletes that can, like Michael Jordan, just seem like he can fly, right? And then you got special force or military personnel that are basically being shot at, and everything goes into full HD mode, slow motion, and they're almost able to maneuver through these danger zones that will literally kill them and survive them battle after battle after battle. And a lot of these soldiers come back and they don't know what the hell that was. Like a lot of people, it's been taboo to even talk about these kind of things. But fortunately, the culture is changing. Burning Man, you got all these high-tech billionaires that are experimenting with these technologies now to sort of help the planet, right? And so that's essentially where technology is going to be able to make flow real.
One of the things I've always admired about you, Tone, is despite your integration with technology and the way you use technology in such a way, you're one of the just best humans I've ever met, and I've always admired that about you. Your human aspect, and your compassion, and your empathy for people, and your way to connect with people, in just in an amazing way. Do you feel that technology is making us more human, or is it taking us away from being human?
So it's all about potential, right? So it's the tool is always neutral, as you and I had discussed before. Fire can be used to cook, can be used to burn, right? So technology is just getting overwhelming. A lot of people are forgetting the fundamentals, the elementals, as I say in life. Is, we're relying heavily with technology. It's great because it is the Archimedes lever, right? It's enabling us to have more time freedom, but we've been very immature with our time freedom, right? It's like more entertainment, more consuming, whether it's food, digital, analog information, so it's, as a human being, usually it takes a crisis for us to wake the up, right? And that's what it took for me, and that's what I'm seeing with pretty much everybody. It's rare you come across somebody that doesn't need some sort of crisis in their life to reevaluate like their situation in life itself. So but yeah, technology can be something that can get in the way. These are things that are available to us free. Not everybody's going to be able to access some of the technologies that we have, right? And nor do you want to spend all your entire day inside a house hooked up to these devices. That's where virtual reality is going, right? It's like, why even leave the house now when you can have all the stimulation right here in your brain? And it's almost like scary, like the Matrix. Just put a food IV and a way to release and evacuate all your waste products, and you'll just be in this world locked, right? So, but the sunlight, you got fresh air, you got water, you got all these amazing things, electricity, whatever. Like, these are all things that are available to us in nature. So, like, I just encourage people to, one, you got your own physical animal nature, connect that to the outside nature and Mother Nature, and you're going to have everything that we talked about. Just sometimes technology is able to help you awaken quicker or heal quicker than sort of the natural means. But also it can also make you lazy, right? And not do the work. So it's just, where are you in your relationship with technology, and how can you use it to optimize your life?
It's an really perceptive and long encompassing talk that we'll probably be having for another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Because I don't see any stop to technology. Who are you working with now? And I'm not saying maybe specific people, because I know a lot of the people that you work with are relatively famous or professional athletes and stuff, but who is the person that uses or finds you and gets that technology, and how do you often help them with what you're doing in the world? Because what you truly do is amazing.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Wade, for putting out the awareness of this type of technology and that it's available. I'm finding now, 12 years later, since I've started, that people are hearing about this buzzword, right? Literal buzz, electrical buzz. And people find out about me just through word of mouth, right? In various sort of stunts that I've done, like the Wim Hof Iceman training, right? Like, that sort of like catapulted me into more of the I guess podcast world, or the outside world of my immediate circle. So people started to see like what I was able to do while being submerged under ice for nearly 30 minutes, right? And so the same's happening with, they're making that association with the work that I do with these athletes. You can see it on Instagram, who I work with, who I've been with, where I've been. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what happens, right? Like in the beginning stages of anything, like only like less than 10% of the population even knows or has access to this stuff. And then the paradigm shifts, and all of a sudden it becomes something that's in the masses. So it's coming soon. Like that's the thing that's really interesting, is that these athletes are finding out about it. Usually they're the first ones, and then it just spills out into the civilian population.
Yeah, it's kind of that top-down model of people that are kind of working at the high performance level or end up influencing it, because oftentimes they are also influencers because of their publicity or because of who people think they are or what they seem to represent or all those type of things. And I think that's the positive use of, say, maybe fame or notoriety, as I say, hey man, I overcame this and this is how I did it. And then all of a sudden, the 57-year-old businessman who doesn't want to have knee surgery uses the same technology that an NFL football player uses to fix his leg, or someone who is got to take care of their kids and rolled an ankle and they can't get around. All of a sudden, there's a technology that can help them fix that. Where do people find you and get a hold of you and find out about this microcurrent technology and learn all about it? Where does that happen?
Yeah, they can go on my website. There's not much on there about the microcurrent. It's more about flow. But even Instagram at ToneFloreal, my name. Just go on there. You'll see what I do. You can send me a direct message. Facebook, same thing.
And we'll include all this stuff in show notes so that people can access, get a hold of Tone and find out about the flow and how to get into the flow. So we started there, and I want to end up back around full circle. Where is the flow taking Mr. Tone?
I'm in San Diego right now. So like I said, I was at the beach earlier, and just enjoying the sunshine and the waves. It's amazing that Mother Nature shows us everything that technology is sort of duplicating or modeled after. A lot of people forget about that, but some of these structures in nature are incredible. And so I had that chance earlier today to be in San Diego. I've been working with my professional football player. And I never know where I'm going to be. Sometimes even the same day, it could be somewhere on another part of the planet. So
I've seen that many times in our life. So, quick thing of practices that you do, I would say, on a daily basis to kind of get into that flow side outside of the technology side of it. What are the things that you do on a daily basis that helps you stay, is what you would say, in flow?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm human, so sometimes I miss these things, but most of the time I have to be in movement. I need to get out of the house, into the natural light, close to nature. During that time, I'm walking, so I tend to leave my smartphone behind. And then I am sort of contemplating. As I walk, I'm observing, I'm watching people, animals, cars, look for patterns. And so when I link up, I know I'm in coherence with my outside environment, my sort of internal environment, because that's when the moment goes clear, right? And so that's pretty much this real simple thing that I have to do every morning when I get up, besides like hydrating and taking my fish oils and some of nice essential fatty acids to fuel my brain. I just got to dial myself up with nature, the elements, all the basic things. And then once I'm in tune, like an instrument, I'm ready to take on the world.
And before you go into a space where you're working on a client or you're working on someone, is that part of your ritual? And because there'll be a lot of people on here that maybe in the healing arts, and you got to kind of fill it well. Do you get into that state before you go to working on someone, or does working on someone get you into the state?
Yeah, it's a chicken or egg situation. It's hard to say. It's usually A, B, C, and Z. All of the above, right? It's like I used to do that in the early days. I would sort of do these triggers or priming, as Tony Robbins would say. Didn't even know. I mean, we do that as athletes. We're a bit superstitious sometimes, where we have to like put on our ice skates a certain way as hockey players, or right, and our jersey and our gloves and our helmet, all that kind of stuff has a particular order. So I did those in the early stages until I started having these almost up-leveled video game beast modes where these states become a stage, where before it was like an occasional occurrence, where when you upgrade to a stage, it becomes your baseline state all the time, right? And then within that baseline state, you'll start having these sort of higher stasis states, as this new book, Stealing Fire, has come out with the Flow Genome Project. But essentially you start having these higher notes where you see what's possible, and then you upgrade to from this state, and that state becomes your stage. And so it's that they called altered states to permanent trait. You literally recode your DNA onto the physiological level that even aging starts to like have abnormal patterns based on current paradigms, right? So chicken or egg, man.
Yeah. So what you're describing to me would be like in financial terms would be like where a support and where the ceiling is, and you hit a new level of support, and then you kind of stay there for a while, and you kind of have these kind of peak things. And do you find that those states come on, or usually there's almost like a drive that comes and kind of pushes you or pulls you, if you will, into that other reality? And oftentimes it can be kind of chaotic, right?
Yeah, that's a hard thing. It's not, this path's not for everybody, for sure. It's as you start reaching these like higher levels, you also start reaching these lower levels, right? So,
or the pain of coming back down is
yeah,
real.
it's intense. And if you don't have the education and the wherewithal or tools to know, or even the awareness to know that that's what's happening, right? You would think that you're right. You just feel like you're incapacitated. And so that's where these sort of spiritual traditions come, and even Western psychology, that integration, and they're now saying like these states are a bit manic, it's not for everybody. And you're playing with fire, so you got to understand like the rules of that game if you want to play it, because it's not, I mean, it's not a pleasant place to be. Like the highest states are amazing, but your internal chemistry, as you called it, Wade, your pharmacology also has a low where you're completely depleted. And it really is a physiological effect where the brain is depleted of its neurotransmitters and all its goodies in there. So how to refuel that, how to like having a hangover, to realize what you're thinking, don't take it seriously, and to that this too shall pass, this feeling. So don't take it personally either.
I think you lead to another spot, which we'll probably cut it here, and then we'll come back to that another time. And that is, for years, there wasn't much science around the recovery process of changing your physicality. And then came, protein shakes, and then came carb drinks and all these, electrolytes and all these kind of things to kind of enhance performance. And we've consistently seen athletes get better and better. And now we see kind of an emerging field of like these, mental states, or these consciousness states, if you will, but they also require training. They require, neurochemical support. There's recovery periods, whether you're going into like intense neural feedback training, where they're using machines all the same. And I've gone through those refractory periods, which are very difficult, when you come down from that space. So I think one of the things we do at BiOptimizers is that's one of the things that we're focused on is how do we manage the come down of those states? How do we optimize our internal chemistry so that it'll support kind of like the consciousness adventure, the rocket ride up the ladder. And I think that you've brought a lot of awareness and technology to people and show this. And we really appreciate you coming on the show today to share with you about microcurrent technology and how this can be a tool to accelerate healing and also to kind of trigger an awakening to higher states of potential, or your higher states of potential in consciousness. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, Wade. It's so good to see you, brother.
It's so good to see you, Tone. And I know we'll be bringing you back on the show in the very near future because we want to dive a little bit deeper onto your discoveries in neurocognition, neurochemistry, and how the chemistry supports the electricity. So stay tuned for part 2. We'll get back to that at another time. Thanks so much for joining us today. Aloha, brother.
Aloha.
At BiOptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the BiOptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.